I'm kind of curious, what is the dumbest thing an American has ever said to you?
I was in an Uber. He told me that, what are the last two letters of COVID? ID. There's microchips in the vaccine, and there's your proof. He continued to say, COVID-19, first letter of the alphabet is A, ninth letter is I, AI. They're turning us into robots. He also said that the vaccine is full of dead babies, aborted babies, and he doesn't want to be injected with a black girl baby. And then he ended it with telling me the pandemic's not real, and started taking his mask off, and I told him, drop me off immediately. He accused me of not being able to handle the truth.
In middle school, like 7th grade, 6th grade maybe, and a student peer of mine said, aren't Jewish people extinct? Me, a Jew.
I saw another video that had the same answer as this, but it happened to me, so I'm going to let you know. I am from Jamaica. I got here in 2018, early 2019, and I worked at Trader Joe's, so I'd interact with a lot of white people. A lot of people were always like, oh my God, how's your English so good? And I'd have to explain to them that we speak English in Jamaica, but I forgave them because it is Latin America and they probably think we all speak Spanish. But I remember one time this old lady that was always friendly with me, always used to cash out at my register. One day she said to me how we got around in Jamaica, and I was genuinely confused. Like, what do you mean, how do we get around? She's like, if we use cows and donkeys. Oh my God. And I was like, no, we drive cars. And she goes, there are roads there? And I go, yeah, like paved streets. And she goes, oh my God.
So first off, I want to say I'm Native American of the UMA. But we all know who you mean by American. So a while back, a few months ago, this American asks me, why do me and my son have long hair, right? Since we're boys or whatever, and I was like, we're Native American, or of the Yomi tribe, and he goes, no. I was like, excuse me. He goes, Native Americans are extinct. We call them. I'm like, are you serious? And I noticed he had a bag from the Desert Diamond Casino, and I go, who do you think runs the casinos? And he kind of looks at me with a blank expression. I'm like, we're not all dead. Dumbass. Oh, excuse me. Maybe I shouldn't have said that.
So I'm American. I live in London. My boyfriend is English. And the first time I took my boyfriend back to America to see where my family lives, after years of being together and months of planning this trip, we landed at the Louisville International Airport, and my boyfriend looks up and sees Louisville and looks at me and asks, when do we get to go to Kentucky? Don't make fun of us all the time for not knowing where your towns and cities are. That's hypocritical.
So I studied with this African American guy in Beijing, and he was like talking about how he wants to visit Africa and stuff, but it's too dangerous. I was like, not everywhere in Africa is dangerous. Zambia is actually very safe. And he's like, nope. The last time I checked, you guys are always burning each other, always have wars and kill each other. I'm like, what is this nigga talking about? Like, literally. Hold on, check this out. What you see right here is the Global Peace Index for 2020, and Iceland, New Zealand are obviously up there. And then we have Zambia over here coming at number 44, if you can see that. And then we've got the mighty United States of America coming at 121. I mean, it's just not logical. We've never had war since the British, my nigga. Since the British.
So, family vacation in Disneyland. Some guy hears us talking and says, hey, are you guys from Canada? My dad goes, yeah, we're from Canada. And the guy's like, oh, okay. We can see he's like, clearly wants to ask something. And eventually he gets up the courage and he's like, so, what's it like down here? And my dad's like, oh, we like Disneyland. Yeah, it's cool. The guy goes, no, but like, what's it like driving? So my dad asks, well, What do you mean? And the guy goes, so do you get like cars at the border, or how does that work? So me, being the eternal jackass of my family, interject. I say, yeah, they got a little training spot at the border, and you trade in your sled dogs, and they look after them. There's like a fee or whatever. But yeah, we get to drive and try it out. They even let me drive. I was like maybe 10 at the time. Then, no word of a lie, as my dad is expecting this random stranger to lose his mind, the stranger goes, wow, that Canadian education system is really great.
Okay, so I studied abroad in America in 2014. Yes, I'm that old. And I got talking to a guy in a bar, and he asked me that age-old question if I ride kangaroos to school. And I was like, no, obviously I don't ride kangaroos to school. I ride emus. Kangaroos are so old school. Anyway, he ate that up. And then he asked me how long I'd been living in America for, and I said, oh, about 2 months at this point. And he's like, wow, your English is amazing for someone who hasn't been here that long. To which I had to laugh and say, we speak English in Australia. And he wasn't even ashamed. He was like, oh wow, really? You learn something new every day.
I lived in Florida for about a year as an exchange student from Colombia, and somebody asked me what language I spoke, and before I said anything, he said, what, Mexican? That's not even...
Okay, so I was born in Venezuela, but I grew up in the US, and my parents and we've gotten asked if we have cars, elevators, traffic lights, fast food restaurants, sidewalks, houses and apartments in Venezuela. Yes, we do. Why wouldn't we have those things? I don't understand, but okay. My dad told me this funny story of how in the 70s my uncle dated this American girl, and they lived together in an apartment in Chicago. And apparently she felt that in Venezuela people didn't have kitchens, and so when my dad and grandpa went to go visit them, she was like, come here, you see this is a fridge, and she started doing that to everything in the kitchen, and they were like, okay, we know. And so months later she went to go visit them in Venezuela and realized that people do have kitchens, and you could tell that she was so embarrassed and she felt stupid. And my grandpa was like, come here, and he reenacted everything that she did when they went to go visit her. And so
this is quite possibly the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I will tell this story any chance I get. So we're in Costa Rica and we're playing volleyball with a big group of Europeans. All of a sudden one of them scores and he goes, Kobe Bryant!
So the story still continues because we just had a day full of really dumb comments, and it was my friend's birthday and we ended up being at Tao for dinner. And when we were ordering drinks, of course, they were checking our ID. And the first ID that she got was my friend's whose birthday it was, and she just walked off with it. She was like, I need to go get my manager. We were like, oh, that's so strange. And her and the manager come back and we're like, this is a fake ID. And we were like, no, it's not. She was like, there's no 23rd month. And there's no state of Queensland. And we all had to be like, literally everywhere else in the world does it day, month, year. And it's from Australia. So, of course, there's no Queensland in America. We're Australian. And she was like, no. And then the manager had to be like, oh, sorry. Ooh.
So I'm a customer service agent, and an American guy had called in. We quickly started talking and I mentioned that I was from Cape Town. He tried to mention a few places in Cape Town that he could remember. So he mentioned Table Mountain, and he started talking about the animals that we have, like the lions that roam the earth. And then he quickly said that he can remember that we had a natural disaster called apartheid. At first I thought he was talking about the ocean, but then I realized that he thought apartheid was a natural disaster. So I quickly moved the conversation away from that topic, and I asked him if I could further assist him on his account. Because, what?
Okay, so I live in America and I'm obviously not American, and the list is so long, but by far my absolute favorite, and I get it all the time, is what is the weather like in Australia? The whole country?
This one?